So you've had a good experience with EMDR.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
Um, I think the purpose I came to visit you for was was helping me in managing uh, my emotional response. I had a tremendous anger response, um, which I've been working on for quite some time. Uh, I think it's been about 8 years, 7 or 8 years, where there was some acute distress, where I had what I call a mental breakdown. Um, I was going through a lot of trouble. Um, I was divorcing or separated, divorcing, have two children. They were younger, about 10 and 7 at the time, and um, and having financial difficulty in my career as an attorney, and um, uh, just in the relationship. But in that marriage, um, I'm not really sure what it was that caused us to separate, but or what the final straw was. But I had a history of using alcohol and working too much in order um, to deal with my anxieties and frustrations and just to cope. And in short, I've been going through counseling now since that time, 2008, and it's 2015 now, in which I was trying to work on managing my emotions, and yet I kept coming to experience anger and violent outbursts, yelling and shouting and cussing, all my familiar uh, ways of coping with stressful situations.
But from that point, you decided to get counseling and
Right.
work on it.
Cognitive behavioral counseling, I think, is what I had been recommended. And I enjoyed for a long time the period of learning about men and women and more about myself and reading and trying to understand why it is people do what they do. So I did that for quite a few years. And it seems like I still would have difficulty in managing my emotions, even though I knew I had the knowledge that how to deal with anxiety and anger that would well up from time to time. But there were times when I really felt like it was like the red out, where and I'd be quick to anger, quick to judge what the other person's saying, and prone to fly off in a rage. Um, and even if it wasn't talking about my kids, if it was because I was having an issue with a particular child, and then um, I would have a communication with someone else, and I'm still um, somewhat stressed or upset about my relationship with my child. I would be prone to be judgmental or very sarcastic or rude, and just generally behaving mean. And that's why I continued working with therapy, because I really wanted to get to a point where I could be like just a general nice person. I mean, I always felt like, well, this is me. I'm just kind of an angry person. I'm critical. I'm a lawyer. I'm supposed to be mean. So it's just part of me. But I never really fully accepted that, and I felt like that there was something more, because it seemed to me that even with the knowledge, I would feel like I should be able to control some of this behavior, but occasionally it would well up, depending on whether there was enough stresses present with work, with family, with finances. Then if there were enough stresses, I'd be prone to act out, whether I'm driving on the street, to another driver, or at the grocery store, or of course to the people that are around me, to my kids or my loved ones. So I wanted to, I was working on relationships. I wanted to better myself. And it was through EMDR that I feel like I really had the most realization.
Okay, so then you came to EMDR, and
Right.
what was that like, or how did it go?
Well, I didn't really know what to expect. You know, just with the name, eye movement desensitization. I thought it would be an eye, you know, an eye exercise of some sort. But we didn't actually do any EMDR for the first 2 sessions, I believe. It was just like regular therapy with counseling and learning, I guess, about my background and stressors.
Mostly talking about your background and also current stressors, I think.
Right. But once we started it, I found it very interesting, and it was very difficult the first time. I remember that I cried a lot, didn't know where the tears were coming from, but there was things happening that I can't explain. And I think that's the success of EMDR is the fact that not all life can be explained in verbal concepts. And we use words to describe how it is we're feeling, but I think the fact is that feelings also are indescribable by words alone. So I think it's a mistake to think, well, gosh, if I read about things, if I can discuss it, then I will know my feelings. And really, those are two different things.
Okay.
Knowing your feelings versus understanding or feeling your feelings is what I found to be the greatest understanding I've received from EMDR.
Okay, so the EMDR helped you feel your feelings and maybe understand them a little from a deeper level.
Yeah, exactly. I believe that the feelings, they're just there. I used to think, well, I could understand my feelings and I could figure it out. But, your feelings are your feelings, right or wrong, and whether they can be explained or not, doesn't matter. You have those feelings. And I think what EMDR has helped me to do is understand where those feelings come from. Because on that first session,
what happened?
you took me back to my most recent stressful episode where I may have been where I was yelling and shouting and behaving, doing a temper tantrum.
So we started with a recent episode, as I recall.
Right.
Okay.
And as we started the EMDR, I took myself back to that place, and I guess the sensors that we were using were alternating left and right, and for whatever reason, images and feelings just started. Were just there, and you helped guide me through that process. But I think ultimately my sense of recall took me back to a memory and an event which had happened that I hadn't thought about for years and years and years. And in essence, it was a memory of my dad when I think I might have been 10 or it might have been 8, but very young, having an anger outburst and putting his hand through a window when I was on the other side of the window. And as a child, I guess maybe I had some difficulty. Now that I come to understand this, I have some difficulty trying to cope with that and understand, what's the right way to behave, and had mixed emotions about loving and respecting and understanding my dad and thinking he's the greatest person in the world, and then behaving that way, and then feeling shamed or guilty for having caused pain because he had cut himself, and I remember he had to go to the hospital and get some stitches as a result of that incident.
But as I recall, even doing the first couple of meetings that wasn't a memory you had about your dad being an angry guy or his angry face, something we hadn't talked about.
Right, right, and just the memory of that event, I think that's what triggered my crying during the episode, where tears just came through. I mean, that was about the time that all that was happening, just the feeling, because I'm telling you about the episode that's in my mind, but at the same time, while I'm doing EMDR, I'm feeling, the trauma as if I was the child again. And I remember crying, or just the tears just coming down, because it was that emotional release and feelings, all the feelings that were associated with that particular event.
With that event, yeah.
And I mean, I can't sit here and describe everything. I mean, it would take a long time to try to understand everything and relay to you everything that I was thinking and what I've thought about that, and what could have been happening, but there's only one. There's a set of feelings that's associated with that. And EMDR unlocked that for me, because I've had lots of counseling, lots of discussions. I've had plenty of moments where I felt like I really understood myself, and then grieved and cried and felt like I'd learned more about myself, that I knew who I was, and I'd be a better person. But it seemed like as things would develop, and I would continue to be bombarded with stress, and as the months or days or months roll by, I would fall back into that anger response.
Okay, it does seem like that session ended with you being calm again, and I think everything went to more of a neutral state. Is that right?
It did. It did. I remember that I felt a little unsettled after the first meeting. I felt good in the sense that I'd relived some emotions, but I had to take some time to work through that cognitively and understand it. It was kind of an unnerving experience. But on the other hand, it was a necessary experience, and it certainly wasn't unmanageable.
Okay, and then we did maybe 2 or 3 more sessions after that. Not a lot, right?
Right, we did a few more
on different topics.
I felt like my stresses had really come under control, or at least my response to the stress was much more managed after that first time. But I kept coming week after week, thinking, well, I don't know if how I will be behaving the next week or two as different stresses present themselves. And I found that with each week, I became much more confident in my feeling that now I really do have control over that anger response. Because even though I might have in the past talked out or acted out on certain stressful situations, I know I would have acted another way a few years ago. In the more recent events, I feel like I really acted in a mature way, in the way I wanted to behave.
Okay, so you feel like from just doing 2 or 3 meetings of EMDR, or even after the first one, I guess, your ability to regulate your emotion or tolerate stress improved.
Absolutely. The first one had the most significant effect, and the subsequent follow-up visits continued to help, but it didn't have the same dramatic effect like the first time.
Okay. How about can you talk a little bit about your personal life? Go into many detail, or you don't have to if you don't want, but with your relationship now, is it different in any way?
Well, absolutely. My wife has noticed that there's a completely different sense about me, and she's extremely pleased. And at first, I think she was reluctant to believe that there was a big change, but I tried to tell her. I said, after that first EMDR session, I said, I'm a changed man. And I didn't expect her to believe it at that particular moment.
Mm-hmm.
I've told her that before in the past. But I, what I was trying to explain to her, but I really feel a difference this time, as opposed to just saying I'm changed, I'll be better. And of course, it just takes time. And I'm so glad that she, stuck it out with me and waited to see whether it really did materialize or not. But she's the first one to say that she's so happy with the way I behave, that there are things that she knows that she would have been careful not to say or do, and she knows how obsessive I can be about certain things, or about how critical if things aren't in the right places, things aren't done the right way. How critical I can be, and I've noticed a difference, and I can tell you she's noticed a difference too.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I tell people who've had a lot of other therapy, that EMDR will actually make it so you can use that therapy. So it's not like it went to waste, but now you're able to access it during times of stress. Would you say that's correct, or how would you?
Yeah, I would, because I don't have that emotional hijacking, or that red out or whatever that occurs. I might still get stressed or angry or feel disrespected in a way, but I have the cognitive ability to help me reason my way past all that. Whereas before there was something else that happened where most times I could reason my way through it, but there might be a time when I was just so stressed out where if there was a trigger, I just go red. And it doesn't matter what thinking or what knowledge I had, I would be behaving like a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum. And it was just, and I can remember myself behaving that way, and after initially initiating that behavior, thinking, oh my gosh, here I go again.
Right. Once the switch flips in the brain, it's flipped.
Yeah. Yeah. So I haven't had any of those episodes. I don't want to.
Any final thoughts? I think this is.
Well, I think it's important, and I've always felt guilty whenever there's a discussion about domestic violence. I know that I've always thought violence was hitting, throwing, and smashing, and yelling and cursing. But I've come to understand that domestic violence can be a whole lot more than that. And I think with the discussion about domestic violence, I feel that this kind of therapy has helped me be part of the dialogue. Because before, I'd always felt like I was violent no matter what, even with physical or hateful speech. But even if I wasn't that way, I felt like I was angry. Inside, I would still behave sarcastically, or mimic, or be rude, and now I feel like I can be part of that dialogue, honestly participate in it, because I really do believe domestic violence is wrong, and I've come to understand, that it's really difficult to understand the problem, but it's even more difficult to really be a part of the solution. And I think understanding your feelings as a man, where they come from, and the fact that, knowledge aside, all the knowledge and talk will say one thing, how you act is the important part. And now that I feel confident in being able to control my emotional response, I feel I can be part of that dialogue. Whereas before, it was just all shame, guilt and shame, because for whatever reason, I might know the words and might know the answers, but I didn't feel it. And I think EMDR has given me that freedom.
Okay, good. I mean, great, actually, right? This is really nice. Okay, well, thanks, Bill. Appreciate your input and giving me the opportunity to share this with others. So, thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Jordan.
Okay.